Japan's southwestern islands have long been defined by quiet fishing communities and sugarcane villages surrounded by coral reefs. But over the last few years, this tranquil landscape has become the most heavily fortified military frontline in the Western Pacific. This is the Nansei Shoto, a crescent of more than 150 islands stretching from the southern tip of mainland Japan toward Taiwan. It forms a 1,200-kilometer archipelagic chain that separates the East China Sea from the open Pacific. At its southern tip, the geography is startlingly close to the region's primary flashpoint. Yonaguni, Japan's westernmost inhabited island, sits just 107 kilometers from Taiwan, close enough that residents can see the Taiwanese mountains on a clear day. For 8 decades, this geography was effectively empty of weapons. Under Article 9 of its constitution and a strict 1% GDP defense cap, Japan focused its military almost entirely to the cold north to deter a potential Soviet invasion of Hokkaido. This policy of restraint created a massive strategic vacuum across the southern islands. These islands act as a natural screen, a series of gates through which every Chinese warship must pass to reach deep water. In naval strategy, this is the spine of the first island chain. By leaving these gates unfortified, Japan allowed China a clear path to project its naval power beyond its near seas. That status quo shattered in August 2022, following U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. Beijing responded with its largest ever military exercises, firing 11 ballistic missiles into the waters encircling Taiwan. 5 of those missiles landed inside Japan's exclusive economic zone, just 80 kilometers from the coast of Yonaguni. The pressure from Beijing has since become relentless. Chinese Coast Guard vessels maintained a presence in the waters around the disputed Senkaku Islands for a record-breaking 335 consecutive days between 2024 and 2025. A Chinese strike on Taiwan would instantly pull Japan into the conflict through the American hubs on Okinawa. For Tokyo, defending the Nansei Shoto is now the only way to ensure national survival. Japan responded by rapidly garrisoning the southern chain. Ground Self-Defense Force troops arrived on Amami Oshima and Miyakojima in 2019, followed by a major deployment to Ishigaki in 2023. These new garrisons are built around mobile radar stations and Type 12 anti-ship missile batteries. This map shows how the physical geography is being weaponized. By deploying missiles with a 200-kilometer range on islands spaced roughly 200 kilometers apart, Japan has created overlapping fields of fire across the entire chain. Any Chinese naval task force attempting to transit the Miyako Strait or the gaps between these islands would face simultaneous missile strikes from multiple directions. Japan has turned its archipelagic geography into a literal wall of fire, effectively bottling up China's maritime ambitions behind the first island chain. This strategy required Prime Minister Fumio Kishida to abandon Japan's post-war pacifist norms and reinterpret the very meaning of the Constitution. As this chart shows, the financial shift was staggering. Japan doubled its defense spending to reach 2% of its GDP, surpassing 9 trillion yen and becoming the world's third-largest military spender. With this budget, Japan authorized counter-strike capabilities, purchasing 400 American Tomahawk cruise missiles and deploying hypersonic weapons capable of hitting targets deep inside the Chinese mainland. The U.S. military is restructuring to plug directly into this network. The 12th Marine Littoral Regiment is now stationed in Okinawa, specifically designed to disperse across these islands and fight from within the enemy's own engagement zone. This hardware and command integration enables Japan to project offensive power across the Pacific, transforming it into a primary military partner for the United States. The strategic calculus is grim. War games conducted by CSIS show that successfully defending Taiwan is almost entirely dependent on the US and Japan using these island bases for combat operations. But there is a micro-level reality beneath the strategy. 120,000 civilians live on these islands. By hosting the missiles meant to deter China, their homes have become primary military targets. On Miyakojima, an ammunition depot was built just 200 meters from civilian houses. While the government has evacuation plans, it would take at least 6 days to move the population, a timeline locals say is impossible if a conflict begins in hours. This modern fear is linked to the Battle of Okimala in 1945, where a third of the civilian population was killed during the horrific fighting between the U.S. and the Imperial Japanese Army. At the Cornerstone of Peace Memorial, 240,000 names serve as a constant reminder of that trauma. It's the reason many Okinawans view the arrival of new missile launchers with existential dread rather than a sense of security. In its rush to arm the first island chain, Tokyo has re-engineered the regional balance of power. Yet the tragic paradox remains. If deterrence fails, these fishing communities will be the first to suffer the consequences of the weapons built to protect them.